Welcome to Groom Scroll. Bum bum bum. Like, you know what I mean? There should be like a little intro.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's going to be it. I'm just going to add some noise to it.
Holy.
Okay,
we were making so many great points. We had
We
such
were.
great banter. You guys, it was probably the best we've ever been, and it's lost to history.
Because we just fucking got into it.
Oh my God. You know, it's actually
Okay.
impressive that's the first time it's ever happened.
Honestly. And it's just hilarious that it's like one of our season closers that it happened.
If you would like to
Okay.
donate your time to be our tech assistant and not get paid, you let us know. Oh my God.
All right. Well, from the top.
Damn it.
I'm so sorry.
Are we going to start this again?
Okay. We're just going to start. We're going to say hello and welcome back. And
Son of a bitch.
Sarah's so mad at me right now.
I'm not mad at you. I'm just like, this is insane.
Okay.
Welcome to our last episode of Groom Scroll and the first season of Booming After Grooming. We are going to be talking about the Brooke Shields documentary, Pretty Baby. God damn it. We are going to be talking about the Brooke Shields documentary, Pretty Baby, which came out in 2023 and was the documentary that I mentioned in our first Bloom bonus episode, which was where I talked about meeting Brooke Shields at a Taylor Swift concert at the Eras concert in Toronto, Canada last year. Yes, in 2024. And the reason I wanted to go talk to Brooke Shields was because of this documentary, because I don't know, Diana, I'm not a huge fan of just talking to celebrities without something to say. I've done it a few times. It doesn't usually go great. It doesn't usually feel awesome. But since I had bought the tickets to see the show as like a reward to myself for all the work that we did to hold our abuser accountable, it felt very kismet that Brooke Shields was there. And I had already watched this documentary that talks about the sexualization of young women and her journey processing like the art that she made as a youth and then like how she was treated as an adult and just, you know, trying to be a woman in the world. And so I went up and talked to her and her daughters who were there at the concert with her, who are also in this documentary. Go back and listen to the Bloom bonus episode to hear me rant about that interaction more. But we thought it would be a cool full circle to end the season by having a chat about the Pretty Baby documentary.
That's perfect. And see, it was even better the second time because you had already practiced doing that.
Don't try to
intro.
justify your terrible behavior.
Oh my God. Yeah. And as we were watching this documentary for a second time because we both had seen it before. It was really cool to see how a lot of themes and topics and even people that we have talked about on season one, like Michael Jackson and fucking Drew Barrymore shows up in this
Yep.
documentary.
The jeans ad
The
campaign.
jeans ad and the 70s. So yeah, I'm really excited to continue talking about.
I'm really
Pretty
excited to
Baby.
repeat everything I just said for the last 30 minutes and then continue on with the conversation.
Okay. So in the documentary, it starts off with Brooke's early years from when she was a baby. Brooke says that her mom just felt like she had like this beautiful creature and she wanted to like share this creature with the world. And even her mom kind of says that in one of the interviews of like, oh, I just think she's got it. She's got this, she's a star. She's so beautiful. Like I want to other people should be able to see her or something like that. And it brings up this other conversation that we were having of how Brooke, it was interesting to me that as Brooke was talking about her experiences and just how she viewed her body, like from a young age, it was interesting to me that it seemed like she was both like really naive and innocent, but also like really mature at the same time because she kind of had to be. She was the breadwinner, you know, it was her and her mom Terry and her dad. They didn't stay together, so it was really her mom Terry that was trying to get Brooke to be a star and like having her do modeling when she was what, like 6 months old. Like she was a baby and already getting jobs, and then her mom just kind of kept trying to get her even more opportunities, and eventually she did land the role of an 11-year-old prostitute in the movie Pretty Baby. Sarah, can you tell us about the movie Pretty Baby since you have your tabs pulled up?
So Pretty Baby the movie came out in 1978. Brooke Shields was 11 during the filming of it. It was shot in New Orleans. It's based off a true story set in the early 1900s, and it's supposed to be about a young girl who is raised in a brothel, and eventually becomes a prostitute herself. Brooke Shields, like I said, was 11 in it. I have never seen this movie. I don't know that I would want to see that movie. But Brooke says in the end of this documentary, she's talking about her movies with her daughters. She said something that apparently, like, yeah, she is nude twice in the film as an 11-year-old, and her daughters are like, that is super fucked up and is child pornography, and they couldn't do that now. So, like, it just brings up a lot of interesting questions about culture and consent, and how things have kind of changed. But yeah, so that's kind of the namesake of the documentary, because when the movie Pretty Baby came out in the 70s, it had like a big backlash, and people were very upset about it and very upset at her mother for letting her be in the movie. And I was shocked at the number of clips they had of them on television, and these like interviewers being like, Brooke, why were you in this movie? And it's like, she is 11.
Yeah.
Like, if you think she's too young to consent to be in this movie, she's also too young to be drug on national television and berated about it. Like,
Her
uh,
responses were just for I would never be able to, but her responses to some of those questions were, again, like, it's both she's both, like, super mature, but also just, like, innocent and naive. She talks about how when she saw her body as, like, just a canvas, like, it was her job, it was just work, and so it was hard for
mhm,
her to she wasn't, like, uncomfortable with some of what she was being asked to do, like in Pretty Baby, or, like, when she does talk about the Calvin Klein jeans, she talks about how for her, she saw that as, like, an exercise in memorization and, like, being physical. Like, she didn't even think, "Oh,
mhm.
I'm being sexualized." There was just, like, this naivete about her. But Sarah, you were helping me kinda see this different the idea of, like, she just learned to dissociate from such a young age is kind of what I don't even know if, like, if that's what protected her, like.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I feel like her body was monetized at such a young age, and her family, her and her mom, were dependent on her as the breadwinners. And so I do wonder if she just kind of was disassociating and was like, this, my body is this thing that makes us money. And I show up and people tell me to do things and I do the thing, then I get paid, that there would be a disconnect, right? Between like what people are asking her to do and what that implies about her. And also, like, when she was doing a lot of this stuff, like Pretty Baby, Blue Lagoon, and I think even the jeans ad, she was really young. And I don't think that I would have, at that age, I wouldn't have thought twice about, I would not have had the contextual concepts. I wouldn't have had the like cultural touchstones to like understand that what I was doing was sexual. Cause I feel like sometimes, you look back at your own behavior when you're younger and you're like, oh man, I did not know what I was doing. Like, I didn't understand the messaging I was putting out there. Like, I
Mm.
remember going through a phase in like, I don't know, sophomore year of high school where I had black pleather pants from Hot Topic that were like when you walked, and combat boots, and then I wore this, like, blue crop top that literally came, like, right under my boobs and had, like, a collar and, like, little sleeves, and I looked good, I was 15, 16 years old, like, I was looking good, and I look back at that now and I'm like, "Girl, you wore that to, like, a county tractor pull, like, what are you doing?" Like, and what messaging were you putting out there? Like, I look back and I'm like, "I'm so lucky a bunch of creepy dudes didn't come up and talk to me." Like, like, why are
But
you
you
dressed like you're at a rave at 2
because
in the
you're
morning?
a kid.
I know, but that's what I'm saying, because that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying, "Oh my god, I'm so embarrassed of myself." I'm saying, like, you don't have an understanding of, like, what you're doing at that age and and how it's going to be received by other people. And I think that is a
That
lot
is
of, like, Brooke's thing. It's like she's just
yeah.
doing, in her case, she's doing the shit people told her to do. She has no ability to understand at 11, "Oh, is the society gonna be upset that I'm too young to be depicting a story about a young girl and it's a real story, so in my mind, it's okay. Like, she doesn't have the ability to, like, contextualize all that.
Right, and I think also because her mom, Terry Brooke talked about how her mom would take her to go see movies, and they were, like, these, like, more artsy European, movies, so, like, yeah, maybe from a young age, she was seeing sex, but watching something like a sex scene or, like, a nude
Mhm.
body, if she was watching with her mom who was able to, like, talk to her about the art of it, then yeah, she never made those connections. Not like her mom was like, "Oh, cover your eyes. This is bad." And I think
Yeah.
that's interesting too because I think so I'm having a moment right now because I'm realizing that yeah, for her and her upbringing and what she was exposed to and how she was exposed to it might have also played a role in how she like viewed her body and the messaging and all of that.
Mhm.
Like, oh, my body can be used as this really cool thing for a movie. Like it could be used for to make art. Whereas like I was very sexual as a kid. And
Mhm.
like I remember being like 5 years old and having a crush on boys and like making out with my pillows. And I
Yeah.
remember too like watching Selena, the movie Selena with Jennifer Lopez at, like, a young age and seeing her in her bustiers, and then, like, I would put on, like, a little sports bra and just, like, walk around the neighborhood, like, that's
It's
what I did,
adorable.
and I did
Yeah.
realize, like, "Oh, I'm trying to be sexy right now." Like,
Mhm.
I was a kid, so, like, I wasn't able to be like, "To what end?" It was just
Yeah,
like, "Oh, I
yeah, you
see
didn't
this."
understand
Yes.
that that would end, yes, what it would end in. Dude, I was the
Yeah.
same way. I was the same way.
But, like, you
I
were
in
trying to be sexy?
Oh,
Like, you were
girl,
okay.
in kindergarten, my mom loves telling me the story. I left her house looking like a normal 5-year-old going to kindergarten, but I had snuck Daisy Duke shorts in my backpack and, like, those little, remember the little plastic princess shoes you could get at, like, a dollar store, and they were just,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
slip-ons? I took those, and at some point during school, or maybe just as I was leaving the school, I put on my slip-on plastic princess pumps, my Daisy Duke shorts, and then I tied my shirt up through my collar, where you could, like, tie it back down to make it into a halter top, because my older
Yeah.
sister taught me how to do that, and she goes, "So, you left the house looking like my innocent 5-year-old kindergartner, and you walked back looking like a lady of the night." Like, she's like, "You did all this by yourself, and you were, like, strutting down the street like, eh." I was also a very strangely sexual
So
young child.
that's what I think it was so hard for me to like relate to Brooke when she was talking about like she just had no idea. And it was fascinating to me too that she was living in this world and she still like didn't feel like she talked about how I forgot when the lawsuit happened where she and her mom sued one of the photographers who took nude
Mm,
pictures of her when she was 6
yeah.
6 years old and he said he was gonna publish them, like, when she was an adult, I think, like, maybe in her 20s, and she talked about how, like, when she was going to the courthouse that there was this guy who licked his lips at her and, like, gave her the sexual look and how she was just like, "Oh my god," like, so it's just
Yeah.
fascinating to me that she didn't like, she was so shielded from sex and sexuality, but at the same
Yeah.
time, she wasn't.
I mean, she kinda talks about that when she goes off to college and she starts dating Dean Cain, who is also
Oh
back
my
in the
god,
news. I was
yes!
like, "I can't believe this. This is so." I feel like Pretty Baby, the documentary, really needs to be, like, reissued because there is so much stuff that's, like, really happening currently. Because that
Yeah.
douchebag just volunteered to be, in ICE. But she talked about, like, he was the first person that she really had, like, well, he was the person she lost her virginity to, and she talked a lot about how that was not a great experience for her, not because he did anything wrong, that she, like, ran out of the room afterwards and was crying, and it sounded like the way she described it is that, like, she almost felt, like, shame about it, but then that to me made sense. It's like, well, of course you felt shame because since you were 11, society has been shaming you, like, simultaneously sexualizing you and shaming you for being sexual, which is the entire experience of being a woman in
Mhm.
America, right? Which is, we want you to be this thing that's sexually attractive to us, but if you enjoy it or you do it on purpose or you do it too much, then you're a slut and you're a
Yeah,
problem.
which
And so it makes
also
sense to me that she would, like, have shame about sexuality and have a really strange relation to it, right? That, I mean, I think it makes
yeah.
sense that she, and some people just aren't sexual kiddos. You and I might be the weirdos in this situation. I think there's a spectrum of it. I think you and I might have been a little bit more on the hyper side of it, maybe. She might have been on the, kind of the other extreme end. And I think the idea of her seeming very mature when she was young also is because her mom was an alcoholic, dude. And I mean, she had to grow up fast and she had to mother her mother and she had to navigate a lot of the world earlier than she probably should have. I also thought it was wild they had her on TV asking her if her mom was a fucking alcoholic when she was like
That
13. I was like, "What?"
Yeah, I wrote down my notes. Why the fuck ask that kind of question and make Brooke defend her mom? Because
Yeah.
she then does, like, and it's so sad because she's like, no, I think the question ends with like, do you think that's an accurate description of your mom? Like, what the fuck is she supposed to say? Yeah, my mom's a drunk. Was she's sitting right next
Yeah.
to her? So she's like, no, like my mom's a lot of things. And I love too how she's like, yeah, she speaks her mind. And I think that too definitely had an influence on Brooke, because Brooke, when you, like, peel the sexiness away, she's just a dork. Like, she's a
Yeah.
playful, dorky kid and dorky adult, and I think having a mom like Terry, who I think is someone maybe it's Brooke's stepsister talks about how, like, when Terry was sober, like, she was outspoken, she was the life of the party, she was a lot of fun, she spoke what was on her
Mhm.
mind, but yeah, when she was drunk, it was duck and cover, like, you never knew what to expect. But yeah, I thought that was super fucked up too. And I think Brooke did a really good job from a young age being able to answer some of those questions when she was being asked about her role in Pretty Baby, and it reminded me of the 90s when Kirsten Dunst was being asked what it was like to kiss Brad
Mm.
Pitt. Oh, everyone, that's every girl's dream. And she's like, what? Also maybe like 11 or 12?
Yeah, I think she was 11.
It's just, like, so disappointing to look back and see grown-ass adults
Yeah.
treating kids like this.
Kirsten Dunst was 11, I just looked it up. And yeah, that was her first kiss, was with Brad Pitt on screen, and same with Brooke Shields, her first kiss was in Pretty Baby, and God, that part where she was talking about how nervous she was going to kiss him and how she didn't wanna do it, and that the actor was like, "Don't worry, this doesn't count." Like, oh, that like bothered me because it's like I get what he was trying to do in the moment, right? Like he's trying to tell her like this isn't real and this isn't like sexual and this doesn't have to count as your first kiss. But at the same time, it's like such predator like language. Oh, this isn't real. It's okay. It's just pretend. You know what I mean? It just felt very, I don't know. Like, it's just like, how are you sitting there looking at an 11-year-old girl who is literally cringing away from you? And then you convince her to kiss you anyways. Like, it's just so like, oh, it's so bad, so shitty. And like all the people that would have been in that moment, like the camera and the lighting and the crew and the director, and they all were just like, yes, like just shove your
Yeah.
feelings down, disassociate from
Yes.
your body, and do it because you signed a contract.
Brooke was talking about how her mom was really protective in some ways. Like, she made sure that Brooke didn't work super long hours and that she had access to a tutor, and Brooke talked about how, like, her mom would also sometimes be like, "You wanna just do nothing today and go to a park." So it was interesting that, yeah, like, in some ways, Brooke was very protected and her childhood was kinda protected, and her mom didn't just strike me as, like, Jeanette McCurdy mom, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't
Yeah.
feel like her mom was trying to exploit Brooke. Like, yeah, her mom was very dependent on her, but I think there was part of her mom that also just wanted to share Brooke and see Brooke be this artist and would take even an opportunity like Pretty Baby to have her be in like one of these films that her and her daughter used to
Mhm.
go see, you know what I mean? So it was just interesting that she
Yeah.
protected her in some ways, but didn't in this really big way. And I think Brooke kind of talks about that too.
I think it just goes back to the idea of parents are people and they fuck up and they can do 9 out of the 10 things correctly and then fuck up this one thing. And I would say that's very clear in this case that this was either a blind spot of her mom's, or something that she just wasn't worried about. Yeah, it just wasn't something that was on her radar. She, even there's an interview clip with her mom where she's saying, well, and she said something like, well, I'm not just sexualizing her, or I'm not just, showcasing her beauty. I'm doing other things too. But she's still acknowledging, she's like, oh no, I know my kid's super attractive.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this. And I think that that's such an interesting theme of the entire documentary is just the idea of like when you are a stunningly beautiful woman, which Brooke Shields is. I mean, like cradle to grave, that woman is just going to be gorgeous. Like that's just her cross to bear as being stunning, but the way that that limits the way that people look at you, and you could argue that it limited the way her mom saw her because her mom saw her as a commodity, and then Brooke talks about going to college after her film career when she's young and how people didn't think that she was smart or didn't or were shocked that she got into college, and then even at college people were like surprised that she was good at it because she's beautiful and people don't expect
Mhm.
beautiful women to be intelligent. And then she talks about like later on in her career getting into like Broadway and comedy. And she had, Suddenly Susan was a sitcom she had, which I totally watched back in the day. And how, again, it was that idea of like, well, you can't be beautiful and funny, and it's like just the limitations that are put on women based on their appearances, which was so ironic to me because when I saw her at the Taylor Swift concert and I was like standing in the line of people trying to like go up and talk to
Mm.
her, every single person in that line was like, "Oh my god, she's so beautiful. Oh, she's so beautiful. Look at her hair. Look at her eyebrows. Look at her makeup. Like, I wonder what skin products she uses. Like, I got to do whatever she did." That's literally all anybody was saying in that crowd was
Yeah.
talking about her appearance, and it was so ironic to me having had watched this documentary because I was like, I feel like none of y'all have seen this documentary. Oh yeah, that's exactly what people are still doing to you to this day.
Uh, yeah, yeah, and it's how she kinda starts and ends this documentary, right? Where she starts by saying, like, "I was just born with this face. Like, I
Yeah.
I didn't do anything to earn this face, I was just born with this face." But yeah, from such a young age, like, that was all people saw of her was her beauty
Mhm.
and her looks and, like, did not look beyond that, and then the end, she talks about how she feels like she had to go through what she went through to be able to really own her life and personally be able to separate this identity that people put on her of like, oh, this gorgeous
Mhm.
person and that's all she is, then now she can see, but I am so much more. And I feel like she talked about that too when she was talking about going to college and doing comedy of like there's so many people who wanted to keep her in this
Mhm.
box, didn't believe that she could be smart or she could be funny and she wanted to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
So the documentary in part 1, so this I don't remember if we mentioned it in this part of the recording or in this actual recording, but this documentary is split up into 2 parts. Each episode is, like, maybe a little over an hour, so I would say, like, the whole watch is, like, less than 2.5 hours, but in part 1, when they're talking about the movie Pretty Baby and how so I think you said, Sarah, it was made in 1978, so this was, like, late
Mhm.
'70s, and so they do talk about second wave feminism and how like this was a time where a lot of women were fighting for their rights and taking back their sexuality and saying fuck the bra, and Gloria Steinem was leading the charge, so it's this really important time in feminism in history, but then society kind of like said, "All right, women, you don't want us to be looking at you and sexualizing you. We're going to turn the focus on young girls." And
Mhm.
I guess like we were talking in our last, I think, Groom Scroll episode about the 70s. Yeah, because we were talking about Labyrinth and how like the 1970s. And so it made sense to me. I was able to kind of connect those dots of,
Mhm.
oh, maybe the baby groupies came out of that, of just like it was just a time to sexualize
Mhm.
young girls, kids, Brooke Shields.
And I think it's a really interesting thing to bring up because it keeps happening. So, like, third wave feminism, which, I think is generically like kind of the 90s to the early 2000s. That's also the same time that Victoria's Secret came out with their pink collection, which was lingerie for children. It was lingerie for tweens, right? And you're seeing it now, right? Like, I would say, we're in some kind of fourth feminism wave happening right now because, Roe v. Wade being overturned and losing fucking rights left, right, and center, that you have a lot more women being a lot more outspoken about women's rights. And then we actively have pedophiles running our country who refuse to release the Epstein files and who are literally trying to legalize child marriage. Like it really makes sense. It's like, oh, the women are becoming uncontrollable. Let's double down on manipulating young girls and
Yeah.
get them before they figure it out. Before they figure out
Yeah.
that we're fucking them over. And so to me that felt very timely, and I think it makes a lot of sense that, that would all kind of coalesce at the same time of that kind of sexualization of young girls as a response to women being like, you can go fuck yourselves, right? Because it's like, oh, well, now we need someone else to service us
Mhm.
in some way.
Ugh.
So we're going to just go manipulate these other people.
So, around that time, the Calvin Klein visual ads, little,
Mhm.
like, clips, commercials started coming out, and Brooke was 15 at the time when those ads came out, and watching that interview with Calvin Klein, fucking disgusting. Fuck that guy, where she's
Yeah.
like, I don't remember the reporter, but the reporter's asking, like, "Well, why do you need to use young girls to make this statement about
Mhm.
jeans?" And he's like, "Wha I'm a bad boy. What do you want me to say?" Fuck off. That's so
Yeah.
gross.
But that's
Um,
also like you could get away with saying shit like that and it didn't I mean, you could argue you could do that now probably, but like
you're the president. Come
ugh,
on.
oh my god. Ah, okay. I hate him so much. Yeah, Calvin Klein came out like a huge fucking creep in that part. And if you watch it, they're really cringy. They're really
They
hard to
are.
watch. Like, and it's super sad to realize like she had no concept of what she was doing. But I think it's fascinating that's the same ad campaign as the one that's happening right now with American Eagle that everyone is so upset about. Cause it's about she's putting on denim jeans and talking about genetics. So it's the same ad campaign. And I'm really interested actually in like how American Eagle legally was able to use that ad campaign since like clearly it was somebody else's originally and I don't know how that works on a intellectual property level,
Well, because I don't think it's the exact same. The
but they're
Brooke
both talking about
Shields,
genetics.
I don't know if the one with Brooke Shields is though. Like
Yes
the
it
at least
is.
like the one where she's got her legs open and she's like, "What comes between me and my jeans? Nothing." That's not
Yeah,
about
but then there's
genetics.
no. There's a whole Diana, I love how you watch the same things as me. And then you always like have a completely different interpretation. It's great.
That's why we make
No,
a great team, Sarah.
there is a whole part where she talks about genetics being passed down through generations and how good genetics are more dominant. And then there's like a whole part of her literally talking about
Is that
genetics.
when she's putting on the jeans and kinda, like, flipping around and, like
It's the same ad campaign. It's just her
okay.
on the floor wiggling around with
Yeah,
jeans and
okay,
she's
then I
talking
think
about jeans. Yes.
okay, I might okay, that alright. So, yeah,
But
I don't
I'm
know how that happened.
curious if American Eagle is, like, owned by the same people that you know what I mean? Because now like, fucking, like, 2 people own everything in the world now.
So, this with the Sydney Sweeney ad, it is really interesting to me. I guess also, yeah, the intellectual property, but more so because that ad, Sydney Sweeney's talking about also, I guess, the same thing of, like, genes, genetics get passed down, da, 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 and then she says something like, "My genes are blue." And
Mhm.
at first, I wasn't sure what the whole issue was with the ad. I really wasn't.
Sure.
And I thought it was about Brooke Shields. I thought it was about like, oh, the sexualization of young girls. But then I started like listening to the debate more and reading articles and
Mhm.
checking out Reddit, where all the answers are. And the whole thing was, oh, it's a dog whistle to white supremacy of like Sydney
Yes.
Sweeney's talking about how like she's got the best genes and she's this like
Mhm.
blonde hair, blue eyes, just really tone deaf. And then
Yeah.
the someone in I think Reddit was like, yeah, but originally it was supposed to just be like a play off Brooke Shields ads with Calvin Klein. And I'm like,
Which were
that's not any
also
better. Yes.
problematic. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think American Eagle is just does not keep up with the time.
Well, it does seem weird to be referencing an ad campaign that was, like, offensive at the time. Like, people got upset
Yes.
at the time. It's not same with Pretty Baby and Blue Lagoon. All these things people at the time were upset about. And Blue Lagoon, I remember watching Blue Lagoon when I was probably, like, 11 or 12. Like, I
I
remember
watched Blue
watching
Lagoon
that.
too.
And now I look back, I'm like, Jesus Christ, she was 14 in that movie. That's insane. She is naked, though, and is the boy. Who's the boy? Like, why aren't we talking about him? Like, how old is he in that movie? He's also naked through the whole thing. But yeah, it is really funny to be like, we're gonna do a commercial based off of a commercial that offended people in the 80s. And it's like, okay, if it was offensive in the 80s, it's probably gonna be pretty offensive now. And
And
it's
not
just
even
funny to
a
me. Well, it's funny to me now that it's like they're like, oh, we cast a above age person, so we don't have to worry. And then they caused this whole new shitstorm for coming off as like fucking yeah, white nationalist kind of vibes. Although, did you see the Gap commercial in response?
yes,
Is really
I
good. Is
that
really
one's
good.
great. It's got a milkshake remix. It's got
Yeah.
some fun dancing. Yeah, that's how
It's
to do it.
also
That's how
and
to
it's
put out a Jean
also
commercial in 2025.
it's also a real throwback to 90s Gap commercials because they used to be all that, where it was like the white background, it was just people dancing and shit. Like it was a nice little throwback. Anyways, so I thought that was a really funny, timely kind of tie-in. Yeah, and then the fact that she dated Dean Cain and he's in the news right now for joining ICE. Fuck that guy as well. And then yeah, Michael Jackson. So she like hung out with Michael Jackson a lot when she was in her like, early 20s. And we just
Yeah,
talked about him and how he would like lie and say they were dating, which makes sense because he was just trying to like pretend to be a normal adult, but obviously was
yeah.
not consenting with her about what he was saying.
Yeah, and I mean, the way she talked about their relationship is, they were both kids who were in the limelight and who had to grow up
Mhm.
really fast, and that it was just like really playful and fun, that it wasn't like sexual in any way. Yeah, to see him talking about how like, oh yeah, well right now it's Brooke Shields. Right now I'm dating Brooke Shields. I'm like, I'll come over and
Mhm.
and that she had to call him and be like, what are you doing? Like I have a boyfriend, or I'm here with
Yeah.
him right now. Yeah, it's just weird to see him use her
Yeah.
in that way, and it's just another person who is using her and her looks and her
Mhm.
body to be like to make them look
To
good,
protect themselves.
to
And
protect
I think that's
themselves.
and I think that's what's so interesting about so many of the men in the documentary that she talks about. It's like, yeah, Michael Jackson, shit, you could talk about that for seasons and seasons of podcasts. Like that guy is a interesting case study of a lot of things, but was clearly somebody that had a reality of who he was that couldn't be shown, right? And like he was trying to like play at being an adult man. Like and she yeah, and he like used her to try to like protect himself and his image. And then same thing with like her first husband, the tennis player. What's his name? Andre Agassi?
Okay.
Agassi. That also was a tie back to like stuff we've talked about of repeating
Yeah.
toxic relationships because she finally had got away from her mother, who was super controlling
With
and
his
had like
help.
yeah, like his help to get away from her. And then she ended up in another super controlling, unhealthy relationship with a volatile person. And we had a whole episode where we talked about that of kind of you repeat your patterns until you really are able to take a step back and see what you're doing. And I mean, she talks about that very openly of I repeated the pattern, but that my husband helped me get away from the first relationship. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's what you have to do, and then it's up to you to get out of the other one. So I felt like that was really interesting that she was just kind of repeating the pattern with her first husband, and they got divorced a few years. I don't think they were married that long. But she also kind of said that like he didn't believe that he deserved the things that he had, so that's why he was like lashing out at her. So again, it's just like all these people just kind of like using weird parts of her to get what they
Mhm.
need and like scratch their own itch.
Him flipping out because she was doing her
Mhm.
job, and licking Joey's fingers, and how he was like, "You embarrass." It's just such fucking fragile masculinity, like, "Fuck
Yeah.
off. Oh, you embarrass me." Why do you care? Like, find better friends. If they're gonna make fun of you for that, find better friends. It was
Yeah.
so
To be
annoying.
clear, Joey on Friends. You just said licking Joey's fingers. I just want to like some context.
Yes.
She was on Friends and
Yes,
she
sorry.
played a crazy woman who thought that Joey's character on the soap opera was a real person. And so she like thought Joey was his character on the soap opera and she was like a stalker.
I want to talk a little more about Blue Lagoon because I do remember watching it as a kid, and I feel like it was at the recommendation of my parents to watch this movie. Like, I want to say I watched this movie with family, like either my aunts or my mom
Oof.
or my sister. Like, I watched it with someone. And it's so first of all, hearing the way that people were talking about it, of like this movie that really just does a really nice job at showing like budding sexuality and what that's like. But
Mm-hmm.
my question is, if I remember correctly, aren't they siblings?
Two cousins,
Cousins.
9-year-old Richard and 7-year-old Emmeline.
Emmeline, probably.
are shipwrecked on a lush tropical island in the South Pacific. And then years later, they hit puberty. So they're cousins, kissing
So they're
cousins.
cousins. It's still disturbing. So when she made that movie, it was controversial, and unlike Pretty Baby, I feel like the blame was now on her and not so much her
Mm-hmm.
mom, where people were like judging her and asking her questions about like why she decided to make that movie. And and I think she talked about too, like during the making of that movie, like, yeah, she was naked and everything, but she wasn't really in touch with her own sexuality. So like she wasn't like super uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But she's talking to some reporter, and he's saying things like he describes her literally as a sexy woman child.
Ugh.
That's not a thing. That's not a
Sexy
thing.
woman
A sexy
child.
woman child, and how he's gonna have such a hard time seeing her as a child after she leaves. Like it's this is what I mean of like, was she dissociating during that? Because like how could you grow up hearing things like that and not think about and still be like naive? You know what I mean?
The power of the difference of how you're raised and your education about things. I think it's very easy if you're not growing up in like a quote unquote normal situation to have abnormal blind spots about things, because she did talk about during the filming that the director kept yelling at her and saying that she needed to like moan with ecstasy, and she was like, I don't know what that is, because by the way, she was 14 during this movie. That's eighth grader. Can you
Mhm.
imagine if you're in eighth grade and you're naked in front of a bunch of like film crew and someone's yelling at you to be more erotic or have ecstasy? You would be like, I don't know what the fuck that is. Because she said the director like pulled on her toe during the
Yeah.
scene to like hurt her so that she'd be like, ah, to get her to
Yeah.
like replicate being sexually aroused. And it's like, that's also really fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
they're like physically in hurting you to get you to act out this thing that you don't even understand as a concept.
Yeah, I think that
And
was during the filming of Endless Love, not Blue Lagoon. But
oh,
she was still really
endless
young with
love.
that one too. I don't know exactly how old she was. Yeah, I think those were like the
Mm-mm-mm.
3 movies that she's talking to her
She would have
daughter at
been
the end.
15 in that one because that was 81.
Yeah, super young.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing to look back on. And then she goes to college and somebody convinces her to write a book about going to
Ugh,
college. And she talks about how she like had a paragraph or less than a page talking about how she was still a virgin. And then it cuts to like all of these interviews where people are asking about her virginity. It's just so gross and like so weird and like
mhm.
inappropriate and invasive. I think it's interesting because you got to watch Brooke really grow up in this documentary, because then she gets married again to her still husband now. They have their first kiddo, and she suffers from like really severe postpartum depression afterwards. And I think that is such a fascinating story all in itself. Like I almost feel like there could be a whole documentary just about Brooke
Mhm.
Shields shining a light on postpartum depression, because I remember this happening as well, because I was an avid Oprah watcher in the 90s. You'd come home from school, you'd get a snicky snack and you'd watch Oprah. Like that's what we did. And I remember her going on Oprah and talking about it, and then fucking Tom Cruise coming on and like putting her on blast
God.
and being a total piece of fucking shit. But
Yeah.
then also I'm like, but also Tom Cruise is in a cult. So it's like,
A
you know what I mean? Like
Scientology.
it's
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Scientology, and that is really where all of that belief shit's coming from for him, is that's the Kool-Aid he's drinking. And so I feel like so many of the people in this movie, like even the people that are being shitty, there's always kind of this part where you're like, oh man, but that person also has all this shit going on that they're not really processing correctly. But yeah, I mean, Tom Cruise's messaging was extremely problematic and extremely
Mhm.
dangerous, because he was like, you need to go outside and exercise and take vitamins, you dumb bitch. Mental health
Ugh.
isn't real, and there's no such
Yeah.
thing as imbalances. And he did later on apologize, but probably only because it was probably hurting his career. Let's be honest. I don't think he probably really
Yeah,
gave a
because
shit.
he's mansplaining. He's mansplaining
Yes.
hard,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's saying things like, "Well, she hasn't read the research and she doesn't know." And it's like, "Bitch, how
Hmm.
do you fucking know?" "Oh, I've read all the research." Yeah, right. It was and
You
yeah,
read your
whatever.
Scientology
Yeah.
pamphlets, dude, that you had to pay $40,000 to get so you could level up. Man, Scientology is fascinating, by the way. I fell down that rabbit hole so hard during COVID, learning about that cult. This is a fascinating one. Oh, and then
But
we
yeah,
totally skipped over the whole part where she talks about her rape.
she went to college. She graduated, I think from Princeton. She got her degree, and then
Mhm.
after she graduated from college, like, she thought she was gonna be able to just kinda jump back into movies, and she kinda had a hard time. So, yeah, she took a meeting with someone. So then she must have been, yeah, like, in her early 20s,
Yeah.
and, that's how so this is how part 2, the second episode of the documentary starts. It's she's talking about being sexually assaulted, and oh my god, her security guy, Gavin, Mr. Gavin,
Mm.
saw her as, like, a little sister. I thought their relationship is very sweet, and he's the one that told her, "What you just experienced is rape,"
Yeah.
and she didn't want to press charges or do anything about it. I did like that she wrote a letter, which just goes back to how healing that can be, but
Mhm.
also goes back to being prepared to be disappointed because whoever this person is, this guy did not respond well. He dismissed it. I wrote,
Mhm.
"Shocker." And so she never got that acknowledgement. I think the second part of the documentary does a really good job at showing a little bit more of uh, the struggles with young adulthood, right? Like being in
Yeah.
your early 20s and also just trying to find her way back into this industry now that she's no longer this, like, little Lolita. That's the other thing
Mhm.
that kept coming up in the documentary is one of the commentators in this documentary, Meenakshi Gigi Durham. She's one of the people interviewed for the documentary. She wrote The Lolita Effect.
Hmm,
Anyway.
and I think she said before she started telling it that she hadn't ever really, I think that was her first time publicly talking about it. And that says a lot, right? Like, and she even said right away when when her friend said, that was rape, she said, "I was not willing to admit that that happened to me." Which
Mhm.
I think goes back to a lot of survivors' response to things. Like, our instinct is usually to minimize what happened, and that's a self-preservation instinct, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you do that to survive the experience of whatever happened to you. And then B, I think kind of goes back to her disassociation, right? Like,
Mhm.
and she talked about that, like during the attack, that she was like, I am going to pull away from my body mentally and like
Mhm.
get through this because, she said, like, if I fight back, I thought he was going to beat the shit out of me, right? Like,
Yeah.
she was doing it to survive and be safe in the moment, or well, safer in the moment. And I think that is a lot of times blame that is put on survivors of like, "Well, why didn't you do this and why didn't you that and you should have tried harder." And it's like nobody knows how they're going to react to something in the moment until they're in it. And she was stunned. I mean, like, how many times have you been in a situation where someone's just said something offensive and you're stunned and you like, 10 minutes later when you're driving home, you're like, "God damn it, I should have said
Yeah.
this and I should have called that person out." But like in the moment you're just like, "Did you just fucking say that?" And that's just somebody saying something offensive, let alone somebody just all of a sudden's naked in the same room as you and forcing themselves on you. Yeah, I think a lot of women just get stunned in those moments. And, if that person was a lot larger than her, just the idea of like, I am not physically safe. Like, if I try to resist, is this person going to kill me or beat the shit out of me? In which case, they'll probably still sexually assault me, but I will then also be beat to shit. You know what I mean? And like kind of picking the less of two
Yeah.
poisons. So I thought that that was all very like relatable and understandable.
And she talks about how, like, her body had practiced dissociating for so
Mhm.
long. Like, she knew what to do, and that she was also just really trusting. Like, she always just said yes to everything.
Yeah.
And so she didn't have a lot of experience to pull from of
Mhm.
setting boundaries and speaking for herself and having agency over
Mhm.
her body.
Yeah, and then I think that ties back to her postpartum experience too of like, here's a situation where you cannot control what your body's doing because your hormones are fucking crashing out, right? And now you're experiencing severe depression and severe anxiety and you're having intrusive thoughts. And I kind of feel like that, and I don't wanna speak for her, but, like, I feel like that is kind of where it seemed like that shift happened, where she maybe, like, really reconnected with her body because she didn't have another choice. Like her body
Yeah.
was just like, giddy up, bitch. Here we go. Like we're going to do some crazy stuff. And her whole life had been her controlling her body. And then all of a sudden her body was controlling her. And I feel like she couldn't disassociate. You can't disassociate from postpartum depression. Your brain is struggling because hormones will fuck you up. And so it seemed like, because that's also when she became, so she wrote a book about postpartum depression and she became really outspoken about it. I don't know. She just seems so much more
Mhm.
present and in her body just watching those interviews and like so much more confident than she did in all the other press
Yeah.
clips of the documentary. And granted, she was older and that probably helps, but she just seemed so much more sure of herself when she was talking about that stuff. And I wonder if part of it was just kind of finally connecting with her body in a different way, even though it was an unpleasant way. She had to really work with her body instead of
Mhm.
run away from it mentally in some kind of way. And then she also did legislative work and helped, throw her name and her voice behind getting bills changed to fund more research about postpartum, which I think is super badass and very cool that she did that. You know, Brooke
Yeah, and
Shields,
yay, Brooke Shields. I
good
really
job.
like that she clapped back at Tom Cruise with her own
Oh
little
yeah,
article.
yeah. I know. I
Yeah.
kind of was like, I should go try to find that article. That would probably be pretty fun to read. Yeah, it felt like that was a cool turning point for her and her personality of just kind of like it just seemed like all the clips when she was younger, she was doing what all young women are raised to do, which is like be nice, be pretty, don't rock the boat, keep everybody comfortable, be well spoken and respectful. And then I feel like when the postpartum thing happened, she was just like, "Listen, motherfucker." Like you're a problem. You know what I mean? And it just feels like she
Yeah.
was no longer concerned with keeping other people
Mhm.
pleased. And I think that was a really
Mhm.
cool turn to see.
When she was first given this idea of, like, writing a book, that in her mind again, the minimizing, where she's like, "Who's
Mhm.
gonna wanna read a book by a celebrity who has everything, who finally has her the baby of her dreams and is now sad?" She's minimizing the whole thing, and then the publisher, whoever, was like, "Yeah, but your story can really help a lot of people." And,
Mhm.
I think, yeah, that's some kind of effect. Maybe there's a name for it already of, like, once you realize, like, "Oh, yeah, I can turn this awful thing that's happening to me, this really hard thing that's happening to me, and use it to help other people," is, I mean, also a giant theme of this podcast, right?
It's
So
literally what we're doing.
and so she does have a second daughter, and it seems like her experience with that one was less intense. And so at the end of the
Mhm.
documentary, we see them, Brooke, her husband Chris, Greer, and Rowan, the 4 of them having dinner, and Brooke is asking her daughters, have you seen Pretty Baby? Have you seen Blue Lagoon? Have you seen Endless
Mhm.
Love? And they're all like, "No, I would never," and, I think it's Greer who mentions that however Brooke felt at the time, like, because she says, like, "I didn't feel uncomfortable." Her daughter says, "Well, okay, but you were also 11, and at 11, like, you can't fully understand the consequences of what you're doing, and people are making decisions for you, and that's a problem." And it was just really cool to see the 4 of them, Chris less so, which I'm fine with. I mean, men
Yeah.
take a back seat sometimes. Women are debating about women stuff, but it was just really cool to see Brooke and her daughters kinda go back and forth with, like, "Okay, well, what do you think about this?" And, "Well, if that's how you believe, then what does that make me?" Brooke talks about or asks her daughters, like, "Well, how" they start talking about social media and, like, why it's okay for young girls or her daughters to be posting pictures of themselves, like, in their bikinis,
Mhm.
and her daughter says something like, "Well, it's my choice, like, I am making the decision to put that out there." So, yeah, it was I like that it ended with them talking because that's also a theme of our Groom Scrolls, or at least, The Great Photo Lovely Life, of generational issues and
Mm.
breaking cycles by talking about issues, like
Yeah.
having agency over your body.
And I think it's an interesting chat to have because the girls were definitely like, "Ew, those movies are gross," and they kept being, "But mom, like, no offense," and she was like, "I take none." Like, she was like, "I'm just trying to have a discuss like, I don't care." if you don't like these movies, you know what I mean? She's like, that's not the conversation we're having. We're having this conversation about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, if it was okay, what it means. And when I met Brooke at the Taylor Swift concert, I specifically had said to her, like, I really thought the part where you talked with your daughters in the documentary was fascinating to get to hear like a younger generation's response to how you were represented, because I do think the kids are all right. Like for as much shit as everyone likes to talk about, oh, fucking Gen Z, boo, 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 boo. I feel like there was a few Gen Zers that we met that were former students of the teacher that were just so much more awake, right? Like they saw what he was and they were so clear on what was going on and so clear about their own boundaries. And that's obviously not true about everybody, but I do think there's just so much more awareness now than there was when we were growing up. And definitely we had more than Brooke would have had when she was growing up, and she had more than her mom had, right? Like that's the idea, is that each generation, kind of like in Great Photo Lovely Life, is like, hopefully with each generation we just do a little better. And I really enjoyed watching that conversation she had with her daughters. And when I said that when I met her, that's when she like went and grabbed her daughters and she was like, they're here, let me bring them over. And I
Oh
got to
my
meet her
god.
daughters. Yeah, so it was really cool getting to meet them, and they were all genuinely so passionate about this documentary. And when I had told Brooke how good it was, she was so humble about it. And she's like, well, I didn't do anything. This film crew showed up and I just answered their questions. And I was like, dude, but no one would have watched this documentary if it wasn't about you. Like you
Yeah.
used your name and your face and your celebrity to shine a light on this subject, which she had already done with postpartum. And it's like, that's badass. Like, that's badass that you spent the time to like talk about a heavy issue that people don't usually want to talk about, like it's not
Yeah.
an easy conversation. So, Brooke Shields, I know you're listening. We know you're an avid listener of Blooming After Grooming. Yeah, it was a great conversation in person, and it's a great documentary. I think, Diana, would you suggest this documentary to anybody?
Yes, absolutely. It is very timely. I love what you said, is that it should just be, let's promote the fuck out of it and have
Yeah.
try to get people to watch it, because there are a lot of timely topics that get brought up. But yeah, of course, I would recommend it. I think it does a really good job at, so the thing that she says at the end that I really related to is that she says, "I had to go what I went through to be able to really own this period, this time of my life." And that's like my one of my biggest takeaways from the movie is, there's nothing that you and I could have done other than, no, nothing you and I could have done could have prevented us from being abused, and there's nothing we can do to take that away. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but sometimes I do have like guilt or confusing feelings of like, I am happy with where I am right now with life
Mhm.
for the most part, and I wouldn't be here if all this awful stuff didn't happen to me. So it is hard to like hold space for both, of like grieving
Yeah.
things that you lost, childhood that you lost,
Mhm.
college years that you lost, whatever. For Brooke, like so many years of her life, that she lost in some ways, and still feeling gratitude for that thing to have happened so that you can have ownership of your life. Like I'm really glad, like I'm 35. I think that's young. I think that, there's nothing but opportunity ahead of me.
Mhm.
But it's just confusing sometimes, and it feels conflicting to then reflect of like, oh, well, I only had this opportunity because I went through this bad thing. So I think
Well,
the film does a good job at kind of showing that struggle.
yeah, and I think that that's an interesting thing to bring up, because I was actually just thinking about this yesterday on my drive back home from running some errands a few towns over, and I was listening to Taylor Swift. This is becoming a Taylor Swift podcast.
And we're okay with it.
And I was listening to Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, which, Diana, if you haven't dove into that song, you really, really, really should. It's a great song. But there's a line at the end that, because the whole Jesus, you really should listen to that song if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's off of her
Okay, I will.
Tortured Poets, off Tortured Poets. But it's this whole song about like I can't even explain it. You're gonna love it. You should listen to it. First time I heard it, I cried. It's such a good song. But there's a line at the end, and it's talking about like, I went through this hard thing and it was terrible, and I came back, and you should be afraid of me, but you should be afraid of me. The reason you're afraid of me is because of what you did to me, is the kind of whole vibe of the song. And at the end, it says, I am what I am because you trained me. And I was like singing along to the song because it's so good. And it made me have that thought though, where it's like, it is so funny to think about where it's like, I am very proud of where I am in my life right now. And I'm proud of who I am. And I'm proud of us for what we're doing and what we have done. And then there is that part of your brain that's like, ew. So are you like grateful that you
Yeah.
got abused? And to me, I guess I interpret it more as I'm grateful for how I responded to it, because not everybody responds to it the way that you and I have.
Sarah, you are so wise. That is an area where I feel like that could really help balance that thought because
Yeah.
and I've talked about, my mental health struggles. This could have ended a very different way for me.
Yeah.
And here I am. So thank you.
Yeah. And that's because of you, not because of him, like it kind of goes back to like when you listen to stories about like serial killers and pedophiles, and it's like, well, this terrible thing happened to them. It's like, dude, terrible things happen to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like most humans, no one gets out of life unscathed, right? None of us do. We are all injured. We have all been traumatized. Horrible things happen to everybody. It's what you do with it and how you move through it. And I think like the Pretty Baby documentary is a great example of like Brooke Shields could be a fucking disaster today and it would make a lot of sense, right? But she's not. And it's because of her inner strength and what she's chosen to do with the lessons of her life, and how, she is using her experiences to try to help other people. And that's what we're doing. And I think, yeah. So I don't think you have to be grateful that bad things happen to you, but you can be grateful for how you respond to it and what you learned from it. And that's up to you, because you could just choose to be bitter and wallow and be self-loathing, because a lot of people do that.
I know you have just helped me reframe those thoughts. And so I'm sure you're also helping other people reframe those thoughts of, it's not a gratitude for what happened. Sarah, I'm getting emotional.
It's happening. Somebody get out the history books. It's only taken 23 episodes.
But yes, it's not gratitude for this bad thing that happened. It's a gratitude for your own personal strength. And that's very lovely. And I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for you for saying that.
Oh, well, I'm always grateful for you too. And I think we're also you and I have an easy time sharing gratitude for each other. But as we both know, we struggle with is showing gratitude towards ourselves, I think is a harder thing to do. And viewing yourself. I also saw a meme the other day that was like, what if you viewed yourself the way that the people that love you view you? And I was like, ugh. Yeah. I got really uncomfortable. But then it just made me think about like how many people have reached out to us and said how much this podcast has helped them and how important it has been. Like, we know for a fact we have helped people, and how people are viewing us as like strong, badass, funny women that are like navigating a difficult thing with grace and vulnerability and an openness to be wrong about things. And I think it's just a good reminder to try to see ourselves that way every once in a while, because we should be proud of ourselves.
Hell yeah. Well, I am really happy that we picked Pretty Baby for our season 1 Groom Scroll finale. We are going to be coming back with more Groom Scrolls. So please send us an email or an Instagram message or whatever. Get in touch with us. We have a website, bloomingafterpod.com, where you can also write in that way. Thank you for listening. Take care, and we'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Hello.
God
Hello.
damn it.
Welcome back, dear listeners. We are both having a hard time right now because we've been talking for about half an hour and just realized that I never hit the record button.
God damn it all.